Hello, everybody, and welcome to VRIC Media, the most trusted voice in junior mining. Our flagship event, the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, is coming up January 19th and 20th at the Vancouver Convention Center. A ton of amazing keynote speakers and guests. Best of all, it's completely free to attend. So get your tickets by clicking the link in the description below. But of course, we are bringing the VRIC to you with our series of expert online panels, and I'm very excited for the one we have lined up for you today. We have JP Cortez of the Sound Money Defense League, Executive Director of the Sound Money Defense League, and Florian Grummes, Founder and Managing Director of Midas Touch Consulting. We're going to be discussing precious metals in 2025. Where are the markets headed? Gentlemen, it's great to have you both on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So now that we're entering 2025, putting 2024 in the rear view mirror, obviously a very exciting year for gold, new all-time highs, all of that. We've been in a bit of a sideways consolidation for a while now. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the catalysts that could potentially drive the gold price higher in 2025. Or conversely, do you think that we could be nearing the end of this bull market in precious metals? JP, I'll start with you.
I think the obvious elephant in the room would be to examine geopolitics. It's going to be a major catalyst as to what happens here in 2025. As you know, there are countries with adversarial relationships to the United States that are actively stockpiling gold. Their central banks are actively stockpiling gold, and their governments are actively and openly talking about finding an alternative to the United States Federal Reserve note for settlement of payments. This is a huge development that will have a massive effect on whether or not gold continues to run. And so when you look around, you see the geopolitics going on, you see stock market implications, you see even in the United States, states are passing legislation to buy gold to hold on their own balance sheets. We're seeing, I think, that retail hasn't been involved up to this point, but we're at a point now where there are so many catalysts in play and so many dominoes ready to fall that retail turning the corner and coming back into this space in 2025 could be what lights this powder keg and sends prices going over 3,000, in my opinion.
Florian, your thoughts on catalysts that could send the gold price higher? Do you think we could be overbought here as well?
Well, generally, I would definitely agree to what JP just said. The whole rally over the last 2 years has been mainly driven by geopolitics and by the need of the Chinese central bank as well as the Russian central bank to diversify themselves out of the dollar. It's been also an attack on the US dollar somehow. At the same time, the whole BRICS story is a little bit questionable. Now Trump is attacking them. We're going to see how strong they really are. Russia has miserably failed in Syria a few weeks ago. So their military leadership is a bit in question here when it comes to BRICS. But I think all those drivers are in place for 2025 as well. However, we also have to assume that the general stock market, might run not completely out of air or steam, but at least we're going to probably see quite a roller coaster in the general stock market in 2025. And I believe strongly that most of the markets are connected somehow and correlated today due to liquidity and money flow. And we have seen that in 2022. If you remember, everything came back down in that year. Gold and silver had massive problems. The stock market tanked, Bitcoin came down. In a liquidity event, the precious metals will not be able to basically do their own thing. So that's something we have to always keep in mind. We can see already that the stock market seems to have some challenges here. It's been quite volatile since the last FOMC meeting. We see that Bitcoin is under pressure, not being able to make it with the 100K into the year end here. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more challenging weeks into 2025. You always have to remember, if things went up drastically like they did in the stock market as well as in precious metals, that creates sellers, people sitting on gains, and so it's always nice to take some profits and pay yourself. So that could be a challenge along the way. I'm still strongly believing that we have not seen a long-term top in the gold price. I think we are witnessing a healthy pullback since late October. And I think that probably gold is already building a base around this 26 level where we are right now, 2,600. Maybe we will test the low at 2,535 again, maybe even a little bit lower, the 200-day moving average around 2,480-ish. But I don't think there is huge downside. But again, in a turmoil event in this general stock market, I think the precious metals will also have a bit of a challenge. Generally speaking, geopolitics will drive gold higher. We will have more demand from Asian central banks. And as JP also rightly said, the retail investors have not been participating in this whole bull market yet. So that's also something that can come and might come. But I don't think that, and that's always the dream of the gold bucks, that stock markets get into a massive correction and everybody's running into precious metals. I don't think that this is going to happen.
Yeah, you're right. It's the dream of gold bugs everywhere, and it seems to be repeated time and time again. I speak to a lot of guests who basically say, the market's going to crash, everyone's going to run to gold. I want to pull on the thread of BRICS for a moment. Florian, you said that you think their power might not be as great as you previously thought, specifically referring to Russia and the situation in Syria. Maybe you could unpack that for us and explain where you currently see the whole BRICS alliance and their potential strength up ahead. You also mentioned Trump talking about implementing 100% tariffs on everybody who tries to work outside of the US dollar. Give us your thoughts there. How do you see that whole situation playing out?
I think it's, again, a complex topic. And again, I think many gold bugs have been dreaming about BRICS taking over tomorrow. And I always warned that this is not going to happen. I always said this is going to be a process of at least a decade, if not 2 or 3 decades. And it's going to be a painful, crazy, volatile, difficult process. And we've seen in Syria that in a very quick and surprising fashion, Assad was basically thrown out. It seems that the CIA and some of the NATO alliance countries and people and involved have basically planned this whole coup over there. And now Syria used to be under the protection of Russia, and Russia has failed to protect Assad regime over there. And if you are a BRICS state or a member of BRICS and you see what they have been done, or what has been done there, and how weak basically the Russian defense has been, you can make up the case that this definitely has weakened the whole BRICS alliance and created probably some doubts or some questions about the military leadership of Russia. We have this ongoing war in Ukraine, which is also very complicated. Again, one of the biggest issues, and I have said this also repeatedly, is always we're talking about BRICS. Yet I don't speak Chinese, I don't understand Chinese, I don't speak Russian, I don't understand Russian. So it's very difficult to get original sources here and original resources. It always goes through at least a third-party research. So again, we've seen Trump just very recently coming out threatening basically India and Modi and saying that if you continue with this BRICS kind of thing, the time is over, that the USA is just watching, So I think we might see some harder fights here, and we might see that this whole BRICS project actually is just being a bit delayed until maybe there's a bit of a weaker president again in America in a few years down the road. We also know that Trump is always barking very loud at the beginning, and then in the end, everybody's just happy to make somehow some kind of a deal with him. So we have to see how this all plays out. But the general trend is not stopping here, is not changing. But I don't think we're going to see huge progress in terms of BRICS taking over the world and coming up with a new reserve currency or something like this.
Yeah, and there does seem to also be a persistent narrative out there that Russia is just steamrolling Ukraine and they're going to come out on top 100%, which I don't know. There's a lot of really smart people saying that. So I'm not saying that's not true, but in the fog of war, it's so difficult to know what's happening. Is NATO going to get more directly involved? There's so many variables that we can't foresee up ahead. JP, your thoughts on the BRICS alliance? They have now, they are going to be admitting some, not full member states, but a few different countries have now, they're going to become, I don't know how that works, a partial member or something. How do you see that alliance playing out in 2025?
It's really interesting. The introduction of quasi members into BRICS, for example, I think Thailand was the one that I saw very recently. And it's not a coincidence that the Bank of Thailand has also been stockpiling gold. So I think we're seeing a collection of gold all sort of being centrally stored in one place not in North America. And the issue here, as far as creating a conglomerate or a group that establishes or tries to establish a gold currency, isn't necessarily the establishment of that currency, right? A country coming together or a leader, a dictator, whoever it is, coming together and saying, we aim or we seek to establish a gold currency. This is your new currency. It's backed by gold. This has been done many times. Most recently, Zimbabwe has talked about and has issued some sort of semblance of a gold-backed currency. But unsurprisingly, I think it's important to note that while anyone can establish a gold-backed currency, maintaining one is much more difficult and requires extreme fiscal discipline. It requires political discipline, and it requires the things that politicians are not known for having: low time preference, the ability to think in terms of decades and in terms of generations, rather than in terms of expedient votes that come on the next election day. So while there is this group of countries talking about establishing something to run around the US dollar as payment settlement, and I understand, to be sure, I understand why countries would do this. Of course, America has weaponized and perverted its power as a global reserve currency, which has led us to this point. Countries with adversarial relationships and countries that don't have adversarial relationships all looking at the state of play and saying, wait a second, the United States has way too much power to help their enemy or to help their friends and to hurt their enemies. What if money didn't have counterparty risk? What if money wasn't subject to the whims of political opinions? And so we're actively reimagining money, and this is taking place in entrepreneurially. We're seeing this take place on the digital in terms of digital currencies, gold-backed currencies, asset-backed currencies. We're seeing entrepreneurship in terms of fractional metals, foil notes, these different types of precious metals options that retail investors have that they've never had before. All of these are a product of people looking to escape the political money that is the Federal Reserve note, money whose policy is intentionally to devalue, to suck the purchasing power out of this money. And so countries, and even in the United States themselves, are looking for alternatives. And this is a situation that the United States themselves created.
And we talked about the lack of retail participation in the gold market. I wonder how much of that you both think could be due to crypto, because Trump ran a lot of his campaign on being a pro-crypto president. Nobody's coming for your crypto. There's talk of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. But absent from the conversation was precious metals. So do you think a lot of this lack of participation is because investors are kind of chasing the shiny object, not only when it comes to Bitcoin, but to all these insane meme coins? The Hawk-Tua girl released a coin for Christ's sake. Do you think people are getting distracted by that and looking to crypto instead, particularly the younger generation? JP, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think that that's probably what is happening. Bitcoin has certainly attracted a lot of attention, and that has certainly led to the tailwind that pushed Bitcoin up past 100,000. Trump's seeming adoption of Bitcoin had a major part of what we're seeing in at least the price of Bitcoin itself today. And we're seeing that it's not correlated. It's close. It acts more closely to a tech stock instead of being more closely correlated to sound money, gold and silver. I think it's important to note that it could, while Trump has been talking obviously primarily about Bitcoin, it could have just as easily been gold. 10 years ago, in the original iteration of Trump for president, he campaigned on, wow, a gold standard would be great. It would be great to get ourselves back to there. Talked about how this country that we have is great because of the gold standard. He's made deals in gold. So this could have just as easily been Trump talking about the virtues and the greatness of gold as it was Bitcoin. This, I think, is a question of political expediency. This is a new constituency, and the alternative, that is the Biden administration, the Warren administration, was ravaging this industry, trying to destroy this industry. So yeah, of course, all of these people look at Trump and they see natural allies. So while I do think that maybe some of the money invested in the last 12 months into Bitcoin would have otherwise gone into gold, I don't think Bitcoin is at any real Bitcoin has any real chance of, in this moment, dethroning gold as a global reserve asset, as a tier one asset, as what central banks are holding and hoarding and basing their money off of. I think that Bitcoin is an excellent to me, I believe it to be sound money. I believe it to be something that everyone's portfolio should hold. But I think that all of this inflow that we just saw into Bitcoin at the cent of the first 70% drawdown that these new holders are going to experience when Bitcoin crashes the way we know it will, and it will pull back. I think all of these people are going to say, wait, what have I gotten myself into? How we need to look at something else. If the goal is to store the money, if the goal is to permissionless money, if the goal is for inflation-free money, then we're going to look for other things, and gold and silver are going to be natural alternatives.
Yeah, very well said. And it looks like we're all on the same page when it comes to Bitcoin and precious metals. Most guests on this show hate Bitcoin. Most guests on my other show, Commodity Culture, hate Bitcoin. People in the comments will hate Bitcoin. Watch and see after this is posted. But I agree. I think it does hold a place in one's portfolio, not as a competitor to gold, but as a complementing asset. Mm-hmm. Florian, I wonder what your thoughts are on crypto at the moment, if you think it's stealing gold's lunch. And your thoughts on Bitcoin as well, because I know last time we talked, you had some reservations about how BlackRock is making ETFs and these types of things. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, first of all, let me tell you that I'm in love with gold since 25 years and in love with Bitcoin, or I fell in love with Bitcoin about 13 and a half years ago. So I've been rather early in both sectors. And I've been very early and very open-minded in contrast to nearly all other gold bugs that I have met along my way when it came to Bitcoin. And most of the gold bugs have simply missed the boat, right? And that's very hard to actually accept for many of them. And I think it has to be said very seriously and directly, even though you don't like to hear it. In the end of the day, I'm now at a stage in my life where I'm pretty much agnostic about most of these kind of things, because I'm seeing markets going up and down, so many stories happening. There's every day a new pick that they're driving through town, basically, and telling you about. You have to be cautious, you have to be careful. I still strongly believe in holding precious metals physically. I also still think that Bitcoin has most likely a very bright future. It's very difficult, these discussions between those two assets. I've been for many, many years saying it's not either or, it's and. You want to have both of them because they complement each other beautifully. They have different features and different bugs. And at the same time, we have to also honestly assess and say that usually in markets, the winner takes it all principle is working, and it has been working here as well. I think if Bitcoin wasn't around, you would see gold trading at completely different levels. And you would see also much more money coming into the mining stocks. And that is because if there's no excitement, people are not chasing these sectors and assets. If there is excitement, everybody wants to be part of it. And that's whatever you look at. It's in art, it's in music, it's in fashion, it's whatever you look at. It's always the winner takes it all and gets all the attention, gets all the money, gets everything. Even though number 2, number 3, number 4 are actually also very good. Like nobody talks about the 4th fastest sprinter on the planet. Everybody's talking about number 1, maybe 2 and 3. That's it. So that's what happens in markets as well. And yeah, I mean, again, Bitcoin has put in a massive performance overall this year. It's been very volatile. Yes, you had to be very patient. You had to be waiting to see that pullback in the summer down to 50K that I talked about, wrote about in various pieces. It finally did happen. And here we are. It's up 120% from that low at the peak, new all-time high, outperforming gold once again. That's the reality. There's no reason for a gold bug to hate Bitcoin. I always suggested to nibble on it, take $50 and just buy a little bit and figure out how it works. Most gold bugs have never done this and then want to tell something about it. So that's questionable. At the same time, there's no doubt about if the best performing meme coin of the last 2 months is Fart coin and it goes up 7,000% in 2 months. And if you young kids in a little room by writing a 2-hour code line, making like millions and billions. And suddenly this fart coin has a market capitalization of the whole silver industry. There is something telling you that's very questionable here, and it tells you that how crazy this whole world has become and how absurd it has become, right? But it also tells you that, yeah, tech is eating the world, and it's just everything that we have known probably in the last few hundreds and thousands of years is being overthrown because something new is happening with all this tech, with all this AI. And I guess we have, and that's why I also said agnostic in the beginning. I think we have no clue what's coming in the next few years. I think the changes and disruptions are so fast and so vast, it's very hard to even get your head around it. But no doubt about, as I just mentioned, if these meme coins, which are backed by nothing, it's just a fun idea, can basically go up like this, it tells you that we are most likely at the peak of a stock market bubble. And once this bubble pops, it will be very painful. And we have to also reflect honestly in the very, very big picture. We haven't seen a real bear market. I think the last real bear market for a bear market that lasts for a few years, the last time we've seen that is in the 1970s. This is like 50 years ago. And since then, simply money printing, more money printing, and saving any bubble and any problem in the market by printing more money in the end of the day. And we have to assume that this will happen again. And we've seen it last year when we had a bank run in America over one weekend. I mean, they completely threw every law, every agreement, everything in the toilet and just came up with, I don't know how many millions of base money over one weekend. So this will happen again. This will drive, in the end of the day, gold and silver higher. This will drive Bitcoin higher as well. Again, talking about MicroStrategy, very crazy what this guy has been building. We know his track record is questionable. He's been doing it at the last bubble 25 years ago, at the internet bubble. He's been also building some weird kind of leveraged construct. And this time he seems to do it really smart. But again, if you have this nice leverage in a stock, the question is always, where's the pain point, the threshold that the market will kill it, and how far Bitcoin will have to drop to basically destroy that kind of structure that he has built. I don't know. I mean, yes, Bitcoin pulled back 75% the last time. It will do this again probably in the future, but it still could go to 1 million over the next few years and outperform gold drastically. I think you need to put away any religion and just look at position sizing. That's the way it takes you to your goals, and put 1% of your money, of your assets in Bitcoin, I think makes sense. Putting 5 to 10% of your assets in physical gold and silver makes a lot of sense. And together, you're prepared for any analog and any digital kind of future. So I think that makes a lot of sense. That's how I see the world nowadays. Definitely, Bitcoin has taken away a lot of liquidity from the precious metals.
The Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, can this actually make a real impact on the debt and deficits, wasteful government spending? Because we saw a similar initiative with the Grace Commission under Reagan, which, although they were able to make some small impacts here and there, the vast majority of what they were trying to propose never made it through Congress. Is this going to be a similar situation? Is this all smoke and mirrors? JP, what are your thoughts?
I think there's something very American about creating a government agency to examine the excess of government agencies. It is redundant. It has no real power. It has no real constitutional mandate. So that said, will they suggest and even potentially eliminate funding for studies on the effects that cocaine has on rats, or the effects of tadpole masturbation while they listen to jazz? Yeah, maybe. It's possible that that happens, but any real meaningful examination of America's financial woes requires studying entitlement spending and requires studying military spending, defense spending, neither of which it looks like anyone wants to do. There is no political will to do this. There are millions of bureaucrats already locked in a place because of civil service protections, because of unions. All of these things are baked into the product that is the American U.S. government. There is very little political will in Congress to do anything about this. So it's a pipe dream. You might reduce spending, not in any meaningful way, but yeah, some things might come and they might go. But as a question of shrinking the size of the American government back down to what was constitutionally designed, back down to a world where we could live without having either the state government or the federal government, or in many cases, both, regulating literally every single thing in every single room you walk into. I don't see this DOGE program being a real means to that end, right? You have, and it's a shame too, because you have such an obvious example in Malay just down south, where this guy is going agency to agency, afuera, afuera, afuera. And we seem to be unable, we lack the political will to do this because, oh no, what about these bureaucrats that are going to lose their jobs? Oh no, if you abolish the Department of Education, that means you hate children. And because of all of the politics around all of this, it makes it impossible to get anything done. So I am hopeful that Elon and Vivek can do something great here. But like literally any other government or quasi-government institution, they are not the answer to this problem.
Yeah, and one interesting thing I heard from actually John Polemy not too long ago on Malay was that he brought up the point that the wheels had kind of completely fallen off the bus in Argentina, and the situation was so dire that people were willing to put up with the pain required for these type of cuts. He said he doesn't think we're quite there yet in America. That could take some time. People actually literally starving and en masse for people to be open to that kind of change. Florian, what are your thoughts on the Department of Government efficiency?
Yeah, I think you just made a very important point here. And if we look at our own lives, I think we all can agree on that. Like usually we're only willing to change if the pain is high enough, if it's so obvious staring in your face that you have to change something in your life. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you will do it. You will somehow muddle through and try to just continue, right? So as you rightly said, the situation in Argentina has been so terrible that people were willing to basically vote for a guy who's actually really attacking all these problems quite radically. At the same time, I'm not a fan of this guy either. I mean, his first action has been to transfer all of the Argentinian gold holdings to the LBMA, and I don't know what kind of suppression scheme he has been helping to continue with that. But so you have to be careful. I think generally speaking, I feel like nobody's trustworthy in politics. So. When it comes to this whole program, obviously Trump is an entrepreneur. Obviously Musk is one. So these people are destined to have these ideas and are probably much more driven to get something done than anybody else. So that's already a good thing. The question is, how much are they really able to do? As JP also pointed out, it's very difficult. I mean, this system has been in place for decades and decades, and lots of people fighting to basically defend what they have and what they get automatically through all these fundings. And I don't know. I could imagine that Musk actually at some point is fed up of how slow and difficult things are moving forward, and then he might just say, I'm getting bored and tired of this. I'm not wasting my time anymore. That could be an outcome actually next year. Who knows? If they would be able to proceed with some of those plans, I think the markets would get into big trouble because, I mean, they want to cut funding in many areas. And as I said before already, markets are driven by liquidity. And we also know that fiscal stimulus has been one of the biggest driver over the last 2 years for this rally that we've seen in nearly everything. So that could actually create quite a lot of problems. And I think from that corner, again, will also come the challenge or the resistance, because if they really do what they said they want to do, the markets would get into problems and troubles. And then you talk with the big banks, and these guys don't like when stocks are falling and their business is going away. So we have to see how this all plays out. The reality has been always that politicians tend to promise a lot before an election, and once the election is there, the whole thing looks completely different. So that has to be considered. It would be beautiful if they managed to attack some of these problems, even though maybe the market would have a challenging time for a few weeks or months. But let's see. I don't have too many hopes here, to be very honest. But at least, again, America is a big step ahead in comparison to Europe, for example. I mean, we don't have anything like that anywhere. So I don't know. I mean, the waste of taxpayers' money here is so huge, and it's the whole political power is so disconnected from the people who work in the countries like Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, etc. And I don't see any way to change this anytime soon. I mean, it's very difficult. So in that comparison, I think America is far ahead.
Silver is the most undervalued metal of all time. Trust me, guys, the paper manipulation is breaking, and we're going to see silver rocket to at least $50 an ounce. I mean, this is something we're hearing again and again and again, often from the same people. It's almost comical at this point. What are your thoughts on the silver market at present? Is it as undervalued as people say? I mean, it's gone up a lot in the past several years. I don't think people realize that. I think a lot of people got in during the whole silver squeeze movement, and that was their base price. They bought in close to the $30 mark and then thought it's going to go to 50, and now they're saying silver's such a waste of time. Why did I get in here? Ignoring the price increase in silver that happened before they got in. Where does the silver market stand right now? Do you think it is undervalued? JP, I'll start with you.
I think that it's important to remember that silver is coming off a fantastic year. Silver is up almost 25% on the year, and gold too, I think was close to 27% on the year. And when you're looking at it in terms of one, chasing returns if that's your only goal, and two, when you're up against things like Bitcoin that are up 100% and such over year, it becomes a little more difficult to appreciate the fact that silver's up 24 and change percent of the year, but that's a really big deal. And so I think coming into 2025, there are a lot of good reasons to be excited about silver. The gold to silver ratio is obviously very high. The green energy demand continues to be what it is. The increase in solar demand is what it is. Silver is more economically sensitive. So despite production shortfalls, I think you could have more headwinds than gold in the case of an economy slowing. I think that one of the things I'm excited to see here in the United States, at least, is in the case of Trump pursuing a drill baby drill kind of approach, a deregulation, a cutting kind of approach. I think that it's interesting that as the United States has increased the volume on some of the bellicose language and the sort of fanning the flames of war with people around the world, it has become clear that the United States is not necessarily particularly well insulated from the effects of demonizing China and these other places that produce a lot of the materials that Americans need to live their lives. So I think we'll see something very interesting, which will be an increase in government spending, an increase in the approval of these projects, at least in the United States spheres of influence, that being North America. We're seeing that already in Canada, the Seymour Lake subsidies, government funding of these projects, and just general government's blessing to pursue some of these projects, which might not necessarily have been the case under a Harris administration. So that might not necessarily affect the price of silver, but we're seeing this deficit obviously exists. And as electrification continues in the United States, this deficit is not going to go away. The answer has to be to find more sources and to tap these sources that exist. And I am hopeful that this administration, more than the alternative, will see more of that sort of cutting of red tape and the blessing that come into some of these mining projects here in North America.
Florian, your thoughts on the silver market in 2025?
Yeah, I'm a super bull when it comes to silver. I haven't been super bullish on silver for many, many years, but I think I laid out in various papers throughout this year, the reasons. And as JP already said, I mean, the gold-silver ratio around 90 is extremely high and tells you that silver, generally speaking, is very undervalued. That doesn't mean that it has to go through the roof tomorrow, next week, or within the next 2 or 3 months. But let's say over the next 5 to 10 years, it's very, very likely that you're going to see silver drastically outperforming gold and basically catching up to gold. So that's the big picture kind of thing. As well, we know that gold made a very important 8-year low in 2022. I mentioned that year before when everything came down, we had a triple low at 1615 for gold. And since then, we had a massive rally. Gold went up from 1615 to 2,790 within 2 years. Silver also went up nicely, but it has not outperformed gold. It basically just kept pace with gold. So the little brother just followed the big brother. And we know from history, whenever we have a bull market and a bull run in the precious metals, usually they last 2 to 3 years, but not very much longer until there comes a big pullback or a correction, multi-months kind of breather, something like the financial crisis in 2008, and then another 3 years of bull run. So what is missing is silver showing up to the party, doing its own thing, taking over the mic basically and running the show for at least the last hour of the party. And during that time frame, we know that silver can go berserk, can go vertically up. We've seen this in the summer of 2020. Silver went up 50% in just a few months, in a few weeks actually. And I assume something similar to happen probably in 2025. So silver is trying to move out of this 4-year trading range that started with the COVID crash, and basically it's been trading mainly between $20 and $30, and it's trying to leave that $30 behind it. Right now, it looks like we're going to close the year below $30, and you can be pretty sure some parties were interested to get the pricing below that $30 year end. But silver is running into a wedge. It is bullish. I think we are oversold again. We know, as JP pointed out, the whole fundamental physical situation. We have a deficit for 4 years already. It's very difficult to extend silver supply, roughly speaking, 800 million ounces per year. It's difficult to get more silver. There is no big new silver mines coming to production in the next year, maybe 1 or 2 with some luck in 2026. We know that silver has been trading with a double-digit premium most of the year in the physical precious metals exchange in Shanghai. We know that the Chinese are buying every ounce that they can get their hands on. We know that many countries are actually might be very close to move silver to a critical metal kind of status. We know that there is this new solid state battery coming in the next few years, which might change everything that we know about batteries, and which needs much more silver. We know that most of the silver has been used. We know that silver is critical for the military, the weapon industry. We know that there's constantly wars. We talked about a few today here, and they need a lot of silver for their rockets and for their weapons. And so I think this deficit is not going away. I think that silver is getting ripe for a catch-up rally. It's getting ready to really show up, but it also means that this is going to be the end of this 3-year bull run then maybe, and we're going to see some form of a correction, breather, pullback. I don't know what it's going to be exactly. What I know and learned in the past is whenever silver showed up and really going to the moon, it's been the time to be cautious. You can enjoy those few weeks, but it also means you have to have your finger on the sell button basically when it comes to mining stocks, when it comes to leverage products, when it comes to trading. It doesn't mean physically that you need to sell everything, but you need to understand that usually when silver shows up to the party, it means like we're in the final inning. So that's what I expect over the next few months. Usually we know seasonality is positive for the metals into, let's say, late spring, early summer. So it would fit all together to see silver between, let's say, February and May going nuts and rally from around about $30 to $50. That's the all-time high. I think it's working as a magnet. The market wants to see that $50 at some point. I don't think it will stay there for a long time. It probably will be a spike and then it will come back down to 35. But at least it's then the third time that it tested $50. And the fourth and the fifth times will be probably not taking another 20 years, but rather maybe a few months or a year or 2 years. And at some point, long term, I'm a believer in 3-digit silver prices.
Well, great thoughts from both of you today. Before I do let you go, JP, tell us about the Sound Money Defense League.
We're a national public policy group based here in the US, and we work state to state and on the federal level in DC to remonetize gold and silver. We're a project of Money Metals Exchange, an online precious metals dealer. And we've found that the reason that people don't use gold and silver as money today is not because gold and silver are bad money, but because the government has shackled them with taxes and disincentives and regulations, keeping people from using them as money. So we go state to state, reducing this friction, reducing the regulation, reducing the taxes that allow people to buy, sell, store, use their precious metals without onerous taxation and regulation from the government.
Fantastic. I would appreciate it greatly if you could come to Europe and remove the insane silver taxes they have here. But I will put a link below to the Sound Money Defense League and Money Metals Exchange. Florian, tell us about Midas Touch Consulting.
Yes, so we are an independent research, analysis, trading, and investment company based out of Germany with office also in Dubai. I'm personally into precious metals, as I said before, for 25 years already. I'm in the markets for more than 30 years. We are doing precious metals, commodities, mining stocks, as well as all the digital assets, and primarily there, of course, Bitcoin. We have daily, weekly, monthly research. So we have daily calls on gold and silver for anybody who wants to follow the prices in the short term. We have weekly chart books, and we have in-depth reports on the gold, silver, and Bitcoin markets every month. It's all for free. You just have to follow us on the website. We have a Telegram channel with like-minded investors from all over the world. Lots of precious metal guys there. Everybody's free to share. Very respectfully, we behave with each other. We help each other. I believe that it's so challenging to make good investments and trading. You would need to help each other. It's not about fighting each other. So it's kind of a swarm intelligence kind of approach with our Telegram channel, where you see a lot of interesting stuff, where I see news before anywhere else, and I learn from the people who are in that group. We have the Substack where people can subscribe for free. They get the daily charts and the weekly reports. And we have an email subscription, which is for free as well. And just follow us. It's all about gold, silver, and Bitcoin.
Great. Well, I'll put a link to Midas Touch Consulting in the description as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge with the audience.
Thank you, Jesse.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you both.